Thanks for joining. I'm super excited to have Nate here to talk about the lovely topic of outsourcing and hiring. I actually just got off a Facebook Live for my remote agency society members, and we had Cade in the hot seat. So this is my second back-to-back double co-Facebook Live today. So super fun. Always technical difficulties though, whenever I have a guest with me. So we do this once a month in remote agency society. I put a member in the hot seat, and I swear there's always some technical glitches every time I have a guest on. We're excited. Thank you guys for hopping on here. And we're going to be talking today about outsourcing with Nate from Free Up, and really just giving you guys some tips and tricks. Nate and I both have a lot of experience with outsourcing, hiring freelancers, hiring white label agencies to scale. And I know a lot of you even commented on the post in the event that you were super excited because you're recently starting your agency, or you're to a point where you need to hire, but you're not quite sure how. And so that's really what we are going to be talking about today with Nate. And so what we're going to do is Nate and I are just going to kind of, give you some tips and tricks. And I will have a document up, and I'll be keeping track of your guys' questions, because what happens during these lives is you'll post a comment and then they'll disappear and you can't see them. So I have a document up where you all can ask questions throughout this, and then at the end, we will answer them. And some of them we might be able to answer when we're talking, but if we don't, just realize that I see it and I'm putting it in a document, and we will get to them at the end. And then at the end of this too, you guys can feel free to ask whatever questions you want, and then we will go from there.
Yeah, and I'm pretty easy to contact as well. So if you think of anything later, feel free to reach out to me on social media or comment later on, and I'll make sure that you get a response.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah, same. You guys can always post after the fact in the group or on this video, which we'll have up in Mod Agency Insiders. So why don't, Nate, you kind of just give our group members here a little bit of background on you and Free Up, and then we can get into it.
Yeah, so I'm a longtime entrepreneur. I started an e-commerce business out of my college dorm room back in 2008. And I really grew that business by using virtual assistants, freelancers, agencies, and I got pretty good at it. But when I started to use the Upworks and the Fiverrs of the world, yes, I found good people, but it also just took up so much time going there, posting a job, getting 50 people to apply, interviewing them one by one. I'm sure a lot of you people out there are in that hiring, that growth stage, which is really exciting, but it also just takes up so much time. And I wanted something faster, and I built my own marketplace when I couldn't find something better. And essentially what we do is we get thousands of applicants every week, virtual assistants, freelancers, agencies from all over the world, vet them, make them available to clients quickly with 24/7 support and a no turnover guarantee. And it's been a lot of fun because I started in the e-commerce industry. I work with a lot of influencers there. I was just at a big conference. And in the past year and a half, we've started to get more and more into the marketing niche, helping other agency owners scale and grow, because we just live in an exciting time. I mean, you go back 10, 20 years ago, if you wanted to build an agency, you had to hire people in your town or the towns around you. And now you have the gig economy where you can hire someone per project, part-time, full-time, all around the world, different price points, skill sets. And if you're not taking advantage of that, you're really missing out.
100%. Awesome. So I want to know, for those of you who are on, how many of you are currently taking advantage of hiring freelancers and white label companies and outsource vendors? Just say yes if you guys are currently doing this right now. I'm just curious, just trying to gauge here how many of you that are live are doing that. And while you're commenting yes, I'll kind of give you guys, because I know we have a lot of new members, which is awesome, and this group is growing. And so I'll kind of give you just a quick background on me and Mod Girl and how I leveraged outsourcing, just so you all know, for those of you who are new. So I, like Nate, kind of found that outsourcing was the way to go, when I started Mod Girl. And so I got to a point. Lisa says yes. Awesome, Lisa. Thanks for being here. Brandon says researching now. Jennifer says yes. So I got to a point where, I had these clients. I started Mod Girl. I was like, this is great. I actually have people paying me for doing what I love. And then I was like, but I can't take on more clients because I'm one woman, right? One person show here. And I can't afford to hire full-time employees. I was bootstrapped. I didn't have any funding. Everything was myself. And so like most, I went to Fiverr. I went to Upwork, which was Odesk, I think, at the time. And ironically enough, when I got started a while ago, Fiverr was just starting out. Looks like most of you are. That's awesome. So most of you are outsourcing a little bit, which is great. So my first hire was actually on Fiverr, which is like kind of sad to admit right now. But back in the day, like Fiverr just came out. And so I found some pretty legit people. Like I had a writer that wrote for me for 4 years from Fiverr. I actually hired a girl from Fiverr that I ended up hiring as a full-time employee like 3 years later. So I ended up finding from a $5 gig, these like long-term, awesome, freelancers to work for me. And then once I kind of saw the power and like, wow, I can take on a lot more by getting some help here, and I don't have to have a huge payroll and benefits and all of that. Then it opened up my eyes to a whole new world and the white label aspect. I started offering white label services. I would hire white label services. And so I kind of just, immersed myself in this whole outsourcing environment. And a lot of you guys know that I'm all about collaboration and not competition. And so I like working with other agencies, whether it's on a white label basis or collaboration basis. And that's part of the reason why I started this group. And so outsourcing has been a huge part of the success of Mod Girl. And so I am super excited that Nate is here to give his, awesome tips and tricks, as well as, me chiming in a little bit of this. So it looks like some of you are saying, yes, yes. Let's see. Not yet. Don't know where to start. Yes, I've used a couple of people from Fiverr. It wasn't perfect, but it was cost effective. I know, right? You kind of got to do a little bit more research now with Fiverr these days. It's kind of a cluster. There's a lot going on there, so you have to do your due diligence. That's what I like about Nate's free up, which we'll get into here in a second. But why don't we kind of get into it, Nate, and kind of give them a rundown of what we're going to talk about today, and then go for it.
Yeah. So one thing that I wish someone just told me back in the day is mistakes. I mean, hiring is not a perfect science. You're going to make hires, right? Or bad hires. It's going to happen at some point. No one has a 100% hiring record. But at the same time, hiring is the only way to grow and scale your agency. I mean, there's very few $5 million a year businesses that are solo one-man operations. It really just doesn't happen. And yes, there's always going to be some risk involved in any part of your business, and hiring is no different. But becoming good at hiring is really key. It's one of those things they don't teach you in school, but it's the difference between success and failure. You can have a so-so business idea and hire the right people and expand and grow and do great, and vice versa. You might have a great idea, but because you hire the wrong people, you just keep going in circles. So it's one of the things that I'm very passionate about. So we'll go over some mistakes to avoid. We can go over my 5-step hiring process and some other tips and tricks that I've just done. I mean, I have a 40-person remote team now. My day-to-day operations, my customer service billing is all outsourced to the Philippines. My blog writing, my Facebook ads, my social media is all U.S. freelancers and agencies that are on my platform as well. So I really practice what I preach. I don't have an office. This is my home office right here, and we're entirely remote. So I know it can be done, and it takes a little bit of work and knowledge and knowing what to avoid and what to try to do. But it really does help your business scale and get to the next level.
Definitely. Yeah. And you bring up a good point. And that's, why I have all the resources and training and courses and stuff I do, because it isn't like I'm sitting here telling you guys like, yeah, I found some amazing people off Fiverr and I was able to take them work, but you guys, it wasn't that easy. Like I had to go through a ton of horrible experiences, people who, put me in a bad position. And I had to take over because they weren't doing their job and I want to do the work for the client. So like Nate said, it's not like a walk in the park. It can be a challenge, but if you have the right resources and the right knowledge and the right process at your disposal, you can cut that trial and error like completely in half, if not more than that, if you know what you're doing. And so that's why we're here today to help share that with you guys.
Yeah, so I'll kind of start off with a baseline, which I think a lot of people don't understand it, and it's where a lot of mistakes happen. Just the difference between basic, mid-level, and expert level virtual assistants and freelancers, where that basic level is that $5 to $10 an hour, where you think of outsourcing people outside the US that, yes, they might have years of experience, but they're followers. They're there to follow your systems, your processes. The more defined that your process systems are, the more followers that you can hire. And it's cost effective, but you also don't want to not have a system and say, hey, I want to hire you for $7 an hour. Go run my huge Facebook ad budget because I don't know how to run Facebook ads. It usually doesn't work out. Then you got the mid-level, the specialists, the bookkeepers, the writers, the graphic designers that you're not teaching someone to be a graphic designer, but they're not consulting with you either. They're doers. They're there to do things at a high level. And you can tweak what they do to fit your needs. And what a lot of agencies do, and this is kind of a little hack, because the last thing you want to do is every time you need a graphic designer, interview someone, or every time you need a writer, build a Rolodex of 2 or 3 graphic designers that you like that you can go to, or 2 to 3 writers. So as stuff comes up, you can always go to them and see who's available and kind of build that Rolodex of reliable specialists. And then that expert level, which this is where it helps you expand your offering and really turn your weaknesses into strengths. People who can come in and execute a game plan, they can consult, they can project manage, they bring their own systems and process to the table. You don't want to take an expert and have them follow your way. You're hiring them to bring ideas to the table. So really understanding those 3 levels is such an important part of hiring. And as you scale your agency, you're going to have to pick different people in different levels to plug different spots depending on what you need.
Yes, 100%. And on that note, Nate, I want to bring up too, so I actually have some of you guys might have seen this, but I have a free video training. It's an opt-in. It's the 3 secrets to successful outsourcing. But part of that is what Nate just said is, knowing those different levels, but also having clarity on like, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, who do you need to hire and what are your expectations, right? Because some of you have commented like, I need to hire these people, but I also need a project manager because I don't want to be the one project managing. So you guys need to figure that out. Like, you need to be super crystal clear on what you're trying to accomplish, what types of clients you have, what services you need done, and those levels that Nate just said before you even like go down the path of trying to find someone to hire. Whether it's an individual freelancer or an agency, you need to get 100% clear on the direction you're going and what type of help you need. So I'm glad you brought that up, Nate.
Yeah, and that kind of segues nicely into the first of my 5 steps of hiring. If you don't know where to start, step 1 is figure out what you're going to hire for. And I recommend coming up with 2 different lists. The first list, just pretty simply, write down everything you do on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. I like to get away from my computer, turn my phone off, and just write down everything I can think of tasks that I'm doing. And I like to prioritize them from easiest to hardest. And then I start chipping away at those easy tasks. Who's on my team now that I can start giving those to? Who do I need to hire for? And if you're just hiring for the first time, you can kind of experiment how far you can get down on that list and really feel comfortable, or what changes you need to make in your business. So the first list is everything you do. And the second list is everything you're not good at. One of the best activities that my business partner and I did, I actually made a Facebook post about this morning. We sat in a balcony for 2 hours and we just said, Connor, you're bad at this. And then he would say, Nate, you're bad at this. And it hurt a little bit, right? It hits you in your gut. But recognizing what you're not good at is so important as an entrepreneur. And if you create a list of everything you're bad at and you realize, okay, I can hire mid-level and experts to turn those weaknesses into actual strengths for my agency, that's how you're going to get to the next level. So step 1 is really figuring out those 2 lists of everything that you can and should hire for.
Love that. No, that's perfect. And it's kind of hard for people sometimes, they really have to think about it, and so on that, making a list, it does help when you guys actually make a list of what you should be doing every day too. So not just like what you do, but a lot of you, in order to meet our goals, we need to be, first of all, documenting the stuff that we need to be doing on a daily basis and kind of those chunking it out. So you need to get in that habit anyway. And it's going to be a heck of a lot easier when you're doing this exercise, like Nate said, for you to go back and look at, whether you journal this online or on a journal like I do, my 90X planner, goal planner, and then go through and look like, what was I really doing that last week? And I really probably could hire someone for that, and so it makes it easier when you guys are already kind of keeping track of your little tasks that you should be doing for you to figure out, well, I really can be hiring for this. And a lot of times too, you might not think that you could find someone that meets your expectations. Yep. That's the thing we come into a lot, and so you're like, no, I'm just going to keep doing it because no one can meet my level of expectations. But you don't know that until you guys try, and so wanted to bring that up too. But I like that. I like the lists.
Yeah, and if you don't have a business partner like I do who can tell the weaknesses or you can't think of them, just start asking people for feedback, people you've worked with, your clients, people that you've collaborated with, and get that honest feedback, which will help you create that weaknesses list. Step 2 is define what that perfect person looks like. So whatever you're going to hire for first, figure out, hey, are they a full-time employee coming to my office? Or are they a virtual assistant? Are they a freelancer? Is it full-time, 20 hours a week, project-based? I like to define what it's actually like to work for me, because what it's like to work for me is probably different than what it's like to work for you and everyone else out there. I know myself pretty well. I know I talk fast. I know I'm direct. I'm not the most touchy-feely, huggy person in the world. And I want to hire someone who can work in that environment and thrive in that environment. So I like to identify what it's like to work for my business, what it's like to work for me, and really figure out what does that perfect person look like. And budget is in there, because the last thing you want to do is hire someone, invest not only your money, but your time into them, and then realize in 3 weeks that you can't afford them, and then you have to start all over again in 2 months. So really defining that in step 2 is very important.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And like I talk fast, I move fast. Like if you work for Modgo, like you have to be agile, you have to be able to roll with the punches, and you have to keep clear communication. And so when I'm looking for someone else to hire, I'm totally upfront, just like Nate said, with like what I am expecting. Like, look, if you can't, independently work by yourself, first of all, like work well with the team, awesome. But if you need hand holding, that you're not a good fit, right? If you're not a fast learner and you can't move quickly, not a fit, And so I spell all of these things out, right? And I'm super honest, just like you. Like I'm pretty blunt and direct. Like if I don't like something, or if you're not meeting my standards, I'm going to tell you about it. And if you don't like that, then, sorry, but I have certain ways I like to do things, for those, I know the different levels we're talking about here, but, not the expert level where I'm looking for them to tell me. These are people that, I know what I want and I like things done a certain way. And so that's another thing too, you guys, because some people they only like to do things certain ways, and that may be fine for other agencies. But with certain things with me, like I need you to do it this way. Sure, you can put your little spin on it, but I kind of need you to follow this process and how I like things done. And not everyone is going to be a fit for that. So like Nate said, the more honest and upfront you can be about everything, the budget, what your environment is like working for you. Do you use Slack? Do you use Basecamp? Like what are your expectations? All of that is huge upfront. Otherwise, you're going to waste time working and hiring, people that aren't going to work out, and then you're back to square one, or worse than you were before. So
exactly. Yeah. So step 1 is figure out what you want to take off your plate. Step 2 is identify what your perfect person looks like. And step 3 is to interview. And when I say interview, don't just interview for skill, interview for attitude and communication as well. And that's really what the free up interview process is all about. I mean, I realized a long time ago that you can hire someone with 5-star reviews, or you can hire someone with a great resume, and 3 weeks later it blows up in your face, and you wonder why. And it's because just vetting for skill is not good enough. You have to find people that are passionate about what they do. They're not just in it for the paycheck. They don't get aggressive the second that something doesn't go their way. And we do one-on-one interviews for attitude, because we know how important that is to having a successful hire. On the flip side, communication. I mean, obviously you want them to speak your language at a high level, but communication goes well beyond that. They have to be able to hit deadlines. They have to be able to keep you updated. You can't have back or he said, she said when it comes to scope down the line. Being able to give estimates and get approval on hours. And we have 15 pages of communication best practices based on my own hiring experiences that they have to memorize and get tested on before they get on the platform. So don't just focus on skill, do attitude and communication as well. And if you are using FreeUp, what I tell the clients is focus on what you're looking for, what's a good fit for you. If you know that, hey, okay, we've done a lot of the attitude and a lot of the communication, a lot of the skill, hey, figure out, hey, what like we talked about in step 2, what's it like to work for me? Hey, can you work fast? Hey, can you work by yourself? If it's something like, hey, I need someone to work every Saturday, make sure you address all those little points in the interview, because the last thing you want to do is have a 45-minute interview, and then the last minute you ask a question and you figure out, oh, they can't even work the schedule that you need. So that interview is step 3.
Yep, I love that. No, communication is huge. That's like the number one thing that, I'm looking for is communication. Like, I need to know. And even if they can't, complete something, let's say I work with a freelancer and they tell me they can complete it by this date. And then they're like, oh crap, I can't. Well, tell me before the date comes. Like, that's all you got to do. But that's, like, believe it or not, that's been an issue with, in the past of hiring people is just communication. And that's why I am so adamant now when I do hire people, like, look, you have got to be an excellent communicator. Like, we have to keep the lines of communication open at all times and keep transparency going because we are on deadlines and we have projects that need, that need stuff done in a timely fashion. So yeah, communication is huge, definitely. And I love that you guys do all of that because you're right. You could, hire, oh, they're so great. They're 5-star reviews. And then they go AWOL for like 5 days. And you're like, what the heck is going on? I have this asks, piling up and they're nowhere to be found. So I love that you guys have that awesome, training in the communication side of things.
Definitely. Yeah. So step 4, which we kind of touched upon, but a lot of people, they end step 3, they interview them, they hire them, and that's it. Step 4 is setting expectations. I like to do it right after the hire, the next day, whatever day 1 is, or when you start the project, just reinforcing, hey, if you're going to work here, if you're going to work with my business, my agency, this is what's expected. This is how we communicate. This is how we get projects done. This is what's good for me. Because the thing to remember is freelancers work for a lot of different clients, and what one client likes, another client might not like. What's good for one client is the pet peeve of another. So really getting on that same page right after the hire is step 4.
Yep. Nope. I love that. And that's something that people miss a lot too. They just throw someone in there and they're like, yeah, figure it out, So that goes with clients too, you guys. It's not just like when you hire people, like you need to set the expectations for anyone. This is clients that you're working with and individuals and even white label agencies that you hire. Setting those expectations are huge.
Absolutely. And step 5, which a lot of people miss out on, is that feedback loop. I like to give feedback as early as possible. If you're having someone build a 15-page website, give feedback after page 1, after page 2, especially if you're working with someone for the first time and you haven't developed any kind of relationship or communication. That feedback is key. The other thing, which I feel like enough entrepreneurs don't do, is I ask for feedback on me. How was the interview process? How can I communicate better? How can I be a better leader, a better manager? And some of the best ideas, things that I've changed in my company that have made me hundreds of thousands of dollars or saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars have been feedback or ideas that have come from other people, because I've really made it a two-way street where no one takes anything personally. We're on the same side. We're collaborating, and we want to continue to share feedback so we can work together long term.
I love that. That's something that I don't do enough either, is ask for feedback on me, how am I doing? Like, how was the process, So good point. I could probably start doing that.
And even if you hate working with someone, even if you fire them, sometimes that feedback is still good, because while you can't apply it to this situation, you might be able to make other tweaks down the line to save yourself a lot of money and time.
Definitely. So I actually had a recent experience with this feedback situation on someone I hired on FreeUp for one, and someone that came in via the Mod Girl site. So I'm constantly, you guys, hiring and looking for freelancers and vendors as I'm growing and taking on new clients and projects. And one was for a B2B client, and came through my site, seemed like a perfect, individual for this writer. I gave him the client information, and I said, just write, a few social posts. I'll give you some feedback. And within 24 hours, he did a pretty decent job. I gave him feedback, and he's like, great feedback. Now I know the style that you like. And, within 48 hours, I had these awesome social posts and he was super receptive. And it was because we kept the communication open. And I said, only start on this many. I will give you feedback. We'll figure it out. Then you can go on and do more. Same with the individual on FreeUp. It was a mock-up design. I was like, only do part of the mock-up for the homepage. I will look at it, tell you if it's the right direction, and then you can go on. That's exactly what he did. And I was like, great, this is actually an awesome direction. You can go ahead and continue. So that's a good tip too, because, previously when I first started My Girl and I would hire, I would give people projects, and they would be pretty large projects. And then I'd look at it way too long. You know, I'd wait until the project was like done. And I'm like, oh God, if I just would have told them early on I wanted it this way, it would have saved a ton of headache and time. So that's a great tip is, you know, give them a little bit when you're hiring someone new, give them feedback, just enough to know, you know, to know that they're doing a good job or they're headed in the right direction. Give them feedback, have them make tweaks however you like it, and then they can continue on. But if you give them something big and you're not looking at it or giving them feedback until days later, and then they're like, oh, I'm done. And then you go back, you're like, oh, geez, you know, now you got to rewrite all of those social posts. So yeah, good tip. I like that.
And the other thing, which is kind of a mistake to avoid, is I avoid working with people that take feedback personally. If I can't give someone feedback without them
100%.
looking at it as a business decision, as a business feedback, and, oh my God, you don't like me personally, why are you so mean to me? I don't put up with any of that stuff. I don't have time for it. It's a huge red flag. I just know that it's going to end up sucking up a lot of my time down the line. So that's a prerequisite to work for me, is you have to be able to separate the business and the personal and accept feedback.
100%. And that goes with like the, you know, in the process of telling people how you like to work. Like, look, I'm going to give you feedback, and if you're going to get all your hurt, you know, your feelings hurt about it, then we're probably not the right fit. And I'm not rude about it. I'm just going to be honest and tell you, you know, this is how I like things. And most people, I've found that, you know, once you start doing this, you guys, and you get more comfortable with hiring, you're going to know when you talk to people, even via email, you're going to know the ones that are like, you know, like you kind of can feel out the ones that get super sensitive about stuff like that. But the second, let's say you don't realize that and you hire someone, and the second that they give you that vibe, cut it off and find someone else, because, you know, there are way too many other amazing people out there that are going to be easier to work with and take that constructive criticism and feedback well. And you can't waste your time with others who don't.
Completely agree. So yeah, that's my 5-step process. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, and feel free to take it and tweak it and make it your own. I mean, that's what's worked for me for the past 10 years. But it's always improving. You're always trying to make that hiring process better and better and better, because it's the backbone of your company.
Yes, agree 100%. So you guys, what questions do you have for Nate here while we have him on? That was awesome, man. And we are moving right along too, which is great.
Both of us talk fast.
I know, right? Both of us. So yeah, guys, go ahead and ask. Oh, we can answer. What was that one? Who asked that? I tagged you in it, Nate. It was yesterday. Let me see. Let me go back and look to see what the question was.
Yeah,
I can answer that.
I'm hesitant to move or touch my phone in any way. I might lose you.
Don't. Okay, I found it. I'm going to post it for everyone to see. And then you guys feel free to leave questions. So this was, let me go back. Hold on. This was from Kristen. And she asked, okay, there's Kat too. Oh, geez, hold on. Okay, we got them coming in now. I'm pasting them so I don't forget them. That was Kristen. So we can start from the bottom. Scott says, you mentioned FreeUp. Any other places you recommend to look for help?
I mean, I'm biased. It's my own platform. So obviously I'm going to say FreeUp. I mean, there's no shortage of virtual assistant companies, marketing agencies that white label marketplaces out there. But I really built FreeUp on what I liked about all the other places and changed it and tweaked what I didn't like. Plus, you get a free $25 credit for mentioning this group when you sign up for FreeUp.
You do. And we'll be posting that link here in a second for you guys. Scott, I will tell you here in a second. I'm actually going to tell you how you can get all of my recommendations for in addition to FreeUp. But I'll tell you one right now. I've actually found quite a bit of success with Upwork, but I have a very strict process and no one can see my jobs. And like, I know, like I hand pick people. So the difference with FreeUp is like Nate's team does kind of the heavy lifting for you because they're already vetting people. So when I'm on Upwork, you know, in the past, like it takes me a little bit longer than if I'm on FreeUp posting a job because they do kind of that hard work for you. But I have found some really great people on Upwork, but you can't just go and post a job and like make it public. Like you have to know what you're looking for. You have to post a job, be super clear, and then you have to go and you have to find the people that look good, and then you have to invite them to that job. So besides Free Up, when we're talking about freelance websites, I found really the only other one, to be honest, that I found some decent people is Upwork. But again, you have to put in a little bit more work to do that. And then also white label agencies as well. So we have several white label agencies that are awesome to work with that I will tell you guys about here in a second, but I want to answer your questions first. So,
and we have white label agencies on the Free Up platform too.
Yes, they do. So they have agencies and freelancers, you guys. And Allie just posted the link for those of you who want to check out Free Up. Nate is so kind to give you guys $25 for free. So if you hire someone, you will get $25 off that first hire as well. So, okay, I'm going to go back to the top. So that was Scott. We have Alistair, which said, have you ever come across anyone so good that you wanted to go into business with them on a JV project rather than just instructing as a freelancer?
So not a JV project, although we do a lot of collaborations with different people, obviously, but one of my first hires. So when I was running this e-commerce business, I met with an accountant first time to pay taxes, and he said, when are you going to hire your first person? And I said, why would I do that? He's going to steal my ideas. It's going to hurt my business. I'm going to have to train him. It's money out of my pocket. I can work 7 days a week for the rest of my life and love it. And he just laughed in my face and said, you're going to figure this out on your own. So my first busy season comes around. I get destroyed. I'm working 20 hours a day. My social life goes down. My grades plummet. I get to the other side and I think, okay, I got to hire someone. Didn't know anything about hiring. Went on Facebook, posted a job. This guy in my business law class applied, said, hey, I don't know what you do, but I need a job. I need money. Hired him without really interviewing him. And he crushed it right away, did an amazing job, one of my best hires. And a year later, I made him my business partner. And he was my business partner for my Amazon business for 8 years. And he's owner of Free Up as well. So that's kind of my success story. One of my first hires, my first hire ended up being my business partner.
That's great. And then his last question on that is any potential bear traps?
Bear traps. So one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs do is hiring's hard, right? So they make a lot of bad hires and then they finally find someone they like. So what do? They load that person up with everything. And if you're running an agency and you're giving them lots of different client projects and deadlines and you're responsible for all your clients, and something happens to that person, if they get sick or they quit or whatever it is, that can really set you back. That can cost you clients. That can ruin your reputation. So make sure as you're hiring and you're finding good people that you're diversifying, that you have backup plans, that you're not putting all eggs in one basket to avoid that trap. We mentioned having 2 designers or 3 designers you can go to and writers and different people doing different projects. Try to diversify yourself as much as possible as you grow.
Yeah, I love that. Good answer. So Kat wants to know, in your experience, what price level should I be looking for mid-level freelancers?
Yeah, so I like to say the basics in that 5 to 10, the mid is in that 10 to 30, that's per hour, and then the experts are in that 25 and up. Keep in mind that the default is hourly, but you can agree to fixed prices too. And I mean, these are real people. They don't always fit into perfect levels. You might get someone that's below market rate or above market rate and all that, and you can negotiate too. But that 10 to 30 is a good range for the mid-level.
Yeah, I found that for me, it's that 20 to 25, really $20 to $30 an hour is what I have found to be that good mid-level, really. But again, I found some good ones that are 15 an hour. So like he said, it really just depends. And it depends on what it is too. Like what type of freelancer, like what services. But really good question. So this is Kristen's question from the previous post. She said, I really need a handful of reliable, creative graphic designers I can call upon to complete client requests. The toughest part is client timeliness are always insane for graphics, something like 24 to 48 hours max, and they often have lots of edit rounds, which can bottleneck the process. Oh gosh, and then I didn't finish the rest of it. I didn't paste the rest of it, but hold on. It was okay, no, I guess, let's see. Then she said, manage freelance teams to handle some of that. I'm not totally sure how to approach freelancers to work in remote agency setting or how to structure mutually beneficial payment structures that work for both agency and freelancers. So she's talking about managing freelancer teams to handle, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, let me dissect that a little bit.
Okay.
So
I know, there's a lot there.
the first part is setting expectations with your clients. I mean, anytime you're doing graphic work or content work, there usually is revision. So setting expectations, okay, we can have the first version out in 24 hours. Make sure that you give us for the first revision. Every time you give us a revision, we get another 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it is. Setting that expectation up front. You don't want clients that think, okay, I'm going to give you something and you're going to hand back a graphic project. It's going to be exactly the way you want it from step one, and they're going to get upset otherwise. So that expectation is important. Very similar on the freelancer side. If I know that my deadline is in 7 days for a creative project, I'm going to say, okay, by day 3, we need to be at X so that I can give feedback and we can collaborate and we can figure out, okay, how can we get this done before the due date? I think what a lot of agencies do is if something's due on Friday for their client, they make it due on Friday for the freelancer, and that doesn't give you a lot of buffer time if something goes wrong or if there are revisions. We also talked a little bit about having a bunch of graphic designers you can go to. I mean, the faster your turnaround, the more designers you should have ready to go. And you can also use a white label agency. We have a pretty large client who hired a graphic design agency from us, and they've got 10 people, and they can give them as much work as possible. And they set the expectations. Hey, whenever I send you someone, I don't have to tell you the due date. The due date is always 24 hours or whatever it is. And they factor in revisions as well. Does that answer the first part of the question?
Yeah, it does.
Cool. In terms of payments, I mean, I can only speak for the FreeUp platform. Our billing period is Wednesday to Tuesday. We charge the client on Thursday, and the freelancer gets paid the following Thursday. So you have a full week to dispute it. You can set weekly limits. They can't go over. You can pause and unpause them. You can do fixed prices where we can charge it up front and hold it in escrow, or do per project. So it's $50 per blog article or per graphic design, and they'll just add a unit every single time that they do that, and it's a normal billing period. So we can really adjust it to whatever makes sense for you. Plus, you get we have your back anyway on the payment and protection side.
Perfect. I like it. And really, yeah, Kristen, you shouldn't be letting your clients only give you 24-hour, turnaround. So make sure you have a little bit more time on that. And then, going back to like the managing the freelancer teams, if you're having, problems or a challenge managing them, then just try to find a project manager that can help you manage some of those freelancers as well. Okay, next question we have. So first of all, Amy says, talk to me if you need niche specific writers. Nate, how many freelancers roughly are on FreeUp?
But around 1,700, approaching 2,000.
Nice. That's awesome. Okay. And then she says, Amy, one more question. When you're budgeting for freelancers, how do you do the math? Is it a percentage of X?
In terms of like how much you want to make on your client, I mean, you got to figure out what the margin you want to be. A lot of times it's setting that correct client budget, which is a little bit more in your realm than in my realm, Mandy, because I've never run an agency before. So I'll kind of let you handle that part of it. But I mean, on the freelancer side, it's about setting expectations up front. What you'll do is you'll say, hey, this is what I want done. How many revisions does it include? What's the estimated cost? What's the estimated hours? And get that in writing up front so that if it goes past that, you can say, hey, no, that's more than we agreed upon, or set that fixed price so that you know that you're locked in. So part of that is just figuring out up from the beginning, but also factoring that there could be revisions, there could be changes, there could be the client saying, oh, you know what, actually I want X, Y, Z, and make sure you get that new estimate and it's factoring in what your margin is.
Totally. Yeah. And you always have to give a buffer in there, like at least a 30% buffer when you're quoting it, just for things like that come up. But yeah, really it's just setting the client budget ahead of time. And so for me, I've been doing this for so long that even if I know I have to hire someone new, I have an idea of what that price range is, like hourly, and like how many hours it would take someone to do that. If I get into a situation where, we take on a lot of projects at once and my team is at full capacity and I have to hire someone, I have a pretty solid idea of what that's going to look like and how much that's going to cost. And I know how long it's going to take people if we're talking hourly. So I just figured that out when I'm quoting the client. Like, you know, I'm going to need a social media manager for this, and it's going to take her or him, you know, X number of hours per week to do this. And so usually, you know, and I'm going to obviously put it on the higher end, you know, whatever the hourly rate is that I'm used to paying, and I'm going to bump it up a little bit in case I need someone, you know, that costs a little bit more. Put that hour in, you know, put in your margins, and then always do a buffer. So you kind of need to have an idea of when you're quoting the client, like what you're going to need in terms of outsourcing and what that looks like in terms of payment wise. So you always want to make sure you're charging enough, because, and like Nate said, you can always go back and say, look, like this is falling outside the scope of what we originally quoted you, and we're going to have to, you know, give you a new project quote for this, you know. So you just need to make sure that you're budgeting appropriately per client project.
Exactly.
Hey everyone, I'm making content like this all the time. If you like this video, please comment and like below. Also, click the subscribe button to get even more content brought to you. Thanks again for watching, and I'll be back at the end of the next video to remind you again.